Hey, Fifth Line, Mike Todd here, in arena host for your Columbus Blue Jackets, and you're listening to the Subjectively Speaking podcast. And now, here's Jeremy Paul and Laura Norman.
All right, so we are grateful to be joined here by Tommy Cross, development coach for the Blue Jackets. Welcome to the show. Appreciate having you on, man. Tell us a little bit about just, how have things been going so far, right? I mean, you're here in town for CBJ Dev Camp, right? One of the things that's probably the most exciting for any guy in your role, right, to be able to have everybody in one place as opposed to having to go out across the country and across the world to try to make sure you get some face time with these guys. But just walk us through, like, what is your role on a week like this? What role do you step into?
Yeah, I think that's what gets us as a development department most excited is we spend all year, like you said, popping to different rinks across the country, North America, even Europe to watch our guys and give them feedback, engage with them and talk to them. But just based on the schedule and other logistics, it's hard to spend a lot of time with them. So to have our guys here this week, all in one building, the FaceTime that we get with them, it's such a great opportunity to further those relationships, build upon the relationship we already have with them, but also to dig deeper into how they're doing as people, where they are in their summer training, what their goals are for the coming season, how they reflect on last season, all those types of things. So I think that's the biggest advantage of this week, and that's what as a department we really try to lean into is those interactions and really furthering those relationships, because next season gets here really quick and you're back to quick interactions at the rink after games or Zoom calls. So I think it's valuable time that we get with these guys this week, and we learn a ton about them. We want them to learn about us, and we get a great experience in Columbus. All of us do. So it's a really important time. Yeah.
So you've got a decent chunk of returners this year at Dev Camp. Is there anyone that is catching your eye that's made some pretty big strides in comparison from last Dev Camp to now?
Yeah, I think there's. I could answer that with a few names, which is a great sign.
Yeah.
Which is a great sign. I think naturally, I think you drift towards guys that have been here a few times before. I think William Whitelaw is a guy that he's had some different stops along the way, but you see a lot of maturity and growth, not just in his game, but his presence around here and how his peers look at him, and so he's a guy, and then some other guys. Jackson Smith comes to mind. I got to spend the past season working with him, and he's grown a lot as a player, as a person. He's a guy that other players look up to. So, and I could say the same thing for a number of guys down our lineup that we have here this week, which I think speaks to the comfort that they have as far as coming back to another development camp year after year, and that's a big thing for us is. Familiarity with the support staff and with the development staff. I think that goes a long way, and we want them to, be able to get to the highest versions of themselves, and that familiarity, plays a big part in that.
Without a doubt. And speaking of familiarity, right? So you get Oscar Hemming with the first-round draft pick this year. He's a guy who plays in the Boston College system, a system that you're familiar with. Obviously, things change over the years, but how excited are you, to have a guy like Oscar being developed in a system like that, right? Can you speak a little bit to maybe what your experience was in that system and how that helped you set you up for what would be a professional career of success?
Yeah. I think first off, we were obviously thrilled to draft Oscar, and he's a young man that has a lot of great tools, and getting to know him this week, the person, there's a lot there to like, and it's been great to get to know him and see what he's all about and have that FaceTime with him. And as far as his development path and you mentioned him being at Boston College, obviously I had a great experience there, and a lot of players have. So he's in a good environment, and they have a top-notch coaching staff, and Greg Brown. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time, so I think the lines of communication there will be it'll be a seamless transition to communicate from Greg to myself, from Greg to Oscar, from Oscar to us. I think it's going to be a great situation, and Hockey East is a strong league. College hockey in general has only gotten stronger, so for him to have gone in there as a 17-year-old and make that transition last year as a young man was a big task. and based on what I've heard from Greg and Brent and the staff there, he did it with an open mindset, and he excelled in a lot of areas. And I know from talking to Oscar, he's excited to be back there and hit the ground running. And I think you learn a lot through your first 20 games at the NCAA level, and seeing as you only played the second half of the year, I think we see that as an opportunity for him to have gone through that and not been given the opportunity to, or the chance to have that second half of the year where you play games 20 to 40. So he's going to get that this year when he goes back, and I know he's excited about having a full season and building upon the impressions he already made there.
Yeah, one of the things I want to pull out of that answer too is just this tightrope that I'm sure you probably have to walk at times, right? Between you want to make sure that the player is developing appropriately and in the way that you hope for. You also don't want to micromanage his development when he's playing for another team. So how do you walk that line? I mean, obviously with some systems that you have familiarity with, relationship with, that happens naturally. Hockey's a game of relationships, so I'm sure it's happening quite a bit. But how do you walk that tightrope of like recognizing this guy is playing college hockey, playing in juniors, whatever that might be? How do you walk that tightrope of we want him to develop into this kind of a player? We also know he's in this other system right now.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting dynamic, and I think a lot of what we talk about with our players is separate from the team structure that they're playing in, whatever league they're in or whatever country they're playing in. It's skills, such as their commitment and their habits and their routines and their mindset. And we have a lot of trust in the programs that our guys play in. They have their own structure, and a message we pass to guys is you got to be where your feet are. So if you're, in Oscar's case, if he's playing at BC, it's to be completely invested in their program and what they're trying to accomplish. Because I think when guys are invested where their feet are, I think that can allow, their growth to happen naturally at a rate that they want and that we want. So and the other thing I'll add is, everyone has a different development curve or timeline, and I think we had a talk last night as a group, and it was just the parallel or the contrast between urgency and patience, and I think they're not mutually exclusive. I think you can have both, patience in an athlete's development curve, but also urgency with the athlete as far as how invested they are and how committed they are to becoming the highest version of themselves. So a lot of our conversation with our prospects are about their mindset, about their approach, about their player ID, next levels, and preparing themselves for that. But our conversations also revolve on how are you bringing value to your team, are you earning trust from your coach, and because that's a fast track to master that wherever their feet are. I think that's going to serve them well over the long haul.
Absolutely.
And we both work in higher education, so with the same age group, college-age kids, in our 9-to-5 jobs, and it's such an important skill set and attitude to instill in them. So I think it's a really great outlook that all of you are working to get them to take on. And obviously some players are going to get more attention than others in this type of situation, but is there a player that's here this week that maybe doesn't get as much attention from media or people like us that you think people and fans should keep their eyes out on and really start paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, a lot of players come to mind, which is a great sign. A guy that I've worked with for the last 3 years, Andrew Strathman. Started in the USHL in Youngstown after we drafted him, and then went to North Dakota, and he's on his way to Quinnipiac. He's a guy that, partially just because of the amount of time that we've gotten to know him, that I think you really notice and appreciate the growth and the progress. So he's a guy that comes to mind. I'm excited for his new opportunity at Quinnipiac, and he saw significant growth during his opportunities at North Dakota, and I know he's excited to take the new opportunity and run with it. So he's a guy that comes to mind, and like I said, there's others that all these guys bring something unique to them, and I think sometimes you don't get to know what that is right away, but the more you get to know them, the more they develop their game. I think it reveals some of the intangibles that they have that I know we value as an organization, and we encourage these players to lean into some of those things, whether it's their second effort, or whether it's their desperation when protecting a lead, or whether it's the type of teammate they are. I think all these things have value, and a lot of times they're just beyond the, skating, shooting, passing. But it takes time to, identify those things, and, once the players become aware of, what those strengths may be, I think they can lean into those, and it can be an asset for them as they, keep moving up levels.
No doubt. And I mean, obviously, right, a team like yours in the player development sphere, if everybody who made an NHL roster was a first-round draft pick, it'd be a pretty small league, right? And so thinking about just the work that goes in this time of year for these guys, especially the ones that maybe aren't making NHL rosters immediately after being drafted, right? What role do you all play in creating or helping them to come up with off-season routines that will help them continue to develop to the place that you want to see them develop to?
Yeah, they, we talk about, when we start off camp, we talk about, resources and relationships. So we want to be a resource for them, and our development department, with Matt and Anthony Dunskov and obviously Rick Nash and myself and Brad Thiessen, onto the coaching staffs in Cleveland and Columbus, and the support staff and the strength and conditioning staff here in this building, guest speakers, other players. Like, these are all resources that we want to provide the players with, and our hope is that they take one thing or multiple things and they apply it to the program that they have. And when they ask us for feedback, we'll be quick to point out, this is an area we think you can attack and improve on, this off season or over the next few years. And then I think our job, our goal is to support them in their preparation for their season, support them with honest, constructive feedback, support them with information about how we think they can navigate that journey to be the highest versions of themselves, and ultimately our goal is for that to be as Blue Jackets, and just to invest in them the way that we know they're investing in their own development.
So obviously a lot about development camp is not only their on-ice development, but also like preparing them for what a life as a pro could look like, and how they can go about that and the different things that it's going to take. But what are you hoping that the prospects leave camp with, knowing what it's going to be like to pursue a pro career?
Yeah, I think some of the guys that play for the Blue Jackets, they're around the building, and I think just having eyes on those guys and watching how they work and prepare, and and some of them are 1,000-game NHL veterans, and that's not by accident. It's by how seriously they take their craft, and continuing to get better, preparing their body and adding armor to their body to withstand the grueling schedule of pro hockey, but also to have the strength to win pucks and be quick enough to process plays and execute plays. So I know that's a little bit all over the place. I think it's extremely valuable to see guys at the highest level and how they operate. And I know some of our guys have gotten that opportunity this week just by being around some NHL players. And our message to them is always that, control what you can control. And a lot of that in the off season is your off-ice work, your on-ice work as far as, replicating game patterns and developing new skills that, will bring value to the role you're playing now and the role you want to play down the road. But yeah, the transition to pro hockey is not an easy one, and that's where I think player identification and their path as far as what role they can play, both near term, but then what role they can play, down the road. I think those conversations have a lot of value, as well as just continuing the message that physical maturity and strength and investment in your body and your athletic ability is really important, because it's the highest level. You got to be prepared and invested, and I think our guys have received that message, and they know the work that's required, and like we said, all the development pathways are different, and patience is required, but that urgency that they can have in pushing themselves daily is a message of ours, and it seems like all the guys, they're on the same page.
Good deal. Well, I mean, obviously the work starts here, but it doesn't finish here for a lot of these guys in Dev Camp. So obviously wishing you best of luck rest of the off season. Hopefully it goes well. Hope rest of Dev Camp goes as you hope, and hope you have some time to relax a little bit going into the off season. So
Yeah,
good deal.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
you for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anytime.
thank you so much.